And all of those instances are based upon, or they're made possible by a populace who decides that they think that it's best, that, you know what, yeah, the government should have the responsibility to grant rights, right? Like that comes from an ideology that lingers somewhere else other than just the people who are in power or something like that.
Right. It's kind of like the biblical principle that in the latter days, as it talks about in the Bible, that people are going to heap up teachers themselves to scratch their itching ears. Same concept with those that aren't believers, and they're going to get the government they want, and ends up being the government they deserve
that
because of that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's more of the secular ideologies that are out there. That's very general, very broad brush. There are so many things you could deep dive into and need to be deep dived into. I said that right? Thanks.
Yeah, you did. You saved it there at the end. I thought you were...
I had to think about it.
But...
So that's
secular view.
The secular view. We want to, as we always strive to, look at things from a biblical worldview, a biblical perspective. So our definition, we'll get into that in a second, but the biblical perspective, just getting to our definition, is that God has set jurisdictions for government, right? These limits, these spheres of authority that they are allowed to function in. He purposely limits its power, and he defines what is right and good for government to do. And this prevents any kind of absolute power getting in the hands of a group of individuals or a single individual like the absolute monarchs of olden days.
Yeah.
But yeah, so from this idea, from the governor's perspective in a biblical worldview, their perspective, their job is to administer justice, righteousness, and equity impartially, to protect the people's safety, their rights, and liberty. Definitely not to administer faith or the gospel or anything like that, but it is to submit to God's limits and God's standards that he gave to government as its own single, separate, independent institution.
Gotcha.
Right? And then from that, the people have their perspective in this biblical worldview, that government's job is to protect the rights and liberty of the people and to be God's servant for our good, ensuring an environment where people can flourish and pursue and enjoy what God has given them to pursue and enjoy, while also having the power to punish evildoers, which again helps ensure, not create, because we talked about that before we started. Ensures, doesn't create the environment, but it ensures the environment that God already intended for it to be there.
Right, exactly. Right? They don't create the environment. They don't, it's not the government's responsibility to make you happy,
right,
or to make your life happy, but to create an environment where that's possible.
Right, exactly.
Where they protect your right to pursue that, as the Declaration of Independence says, the pursuit of happiness, not that to make you happy, but that to preserve your right to pursue happiness.
Right. It's up to you.
Yep.
Right. It's up to you. It's not up to government. And that's what a lot of the collectivist totalitarian regimes were getting at, as they were trying to ensure their idea of what happiness was supposed to be for everybody.
Yep.
But this, as we'll get into the scriptures behind this in a few minutes, this idea is that God's leaving it up to you. You were given dominion as an individual. You're supposed to go and do these things and work hard, enjoy the fruit of your labor, build businesses, build a farm, whatever it is that you're going to do in your life, write a book, whatever. Government's job isn't to give you success there. It's to ensure the environment that you can go work hard for the success.
Yeah. And someone else can't stop you from doing so on an arbitrary basis.
Right. And that kind of gets into our rights episodes that we got on, and we invite our listeners to go listen to those.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. So that brings us to what I would say is just a working definition, and it's a definition not of like government, but of government's duty.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
So government's fundamental duty is to protect the God-given rights and liberty of the people and to restore the people's rights whenever they are violated, aka justice.
Yeah.
Government is to do this all across the board in an equitable, non-partial way. And finally, government is to seek to and promote good paths for its citizens, not choose paths, but it's to promote and seek good as God defines good for the people.
Yeah.
Right?
Right on. So why do we need government in the first place? Because ideally, if we all know what's good according to God's standard, then we could just figure it out. You and me, Joel, we never have any conflict. We could just let's settle this.
We had conflict trying to get all this set up.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, just about every week.
Yeah. No.
We're like the Beatles, where they hated each other, behind the scenes.
That is
but
not true.
At
least not for me. I don't know about you. Sheesh, I'm finding out some new stuff here.
Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I'm just kidding. No. So why do we need government because of this right here?
Right. No. Why we need government is because of sin. Mankind's nature is bent towards evil. Right? We read that in the Bible over and over again. Because Adam and Eve fell, and in that the rest of us were included as they were our representatives in that time, we too now born of them, have a sin nature. We're prone to sin. We're prone to acts of evil. God's grace, his common grace, is a theological term that God is gracious towards even the wicked.
Yeah.
He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good. It rains on the evil and the good. He's gracious. He's patient. There's been a lot of good in world history, even with non-believers, but by and large, sin. That's why we need government. That's why he established it right after the flood, I would argue, when he gave the Noahic covenant that, A, we get to eat meat, which praise God for that.
Yeah.
But B, if man sheds men's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. As in, God is setting up there that he's giving a jurisdiction to mankind to exercise some justice in the world.
Sure. Right.
So, first reason is sin. And in that, you have two branches of that sin as it's played out in societies.
Mm-hmm.
The first is anarchy, the idea that there is no government.
Right. Or there shouldn't be government.
Or there shouldn't be, but if you were just looking at it, there's no government, that's anarchy, right? It's an anarchic, I think that's right.
Anarchical?
Cool.
We're making up all kinds of words
aren't we?
today.
I'm going to say anarchy without government.
Yeah.
You can see, the Bible talks about this and addresses it at the end of the book of Judges, when it says that there was no king in those days, no government, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes.
Yeah.
All right, so that's one branch that sin leads to in society, and there was if you just go read the book of Judges, you see the chaos.
Yeah.
It is just crazy chaos. The other part, though, is lawlessness, and this is where the sin bleeds into government, where they stop abiding under laws, under God's law, because in Deuteronomy 17, God set specific laws for the king.
Right.
That way his heart wouldn't be raised up above his brethren. He wouldn't think of himself as better. And he wouldn't start acting in a lawless, arbitrary, despotic way towards the people he was called to serve.
Yeah.
Right?
Makes sense.
So yeah, you have sin, anarchy, lawlessness.
Yeah.
That's because of those reasons, we need government, and specifically a government, as we'll get into, based on the rule of law.
Yeah. And ironically, just as a quick side note, the societies from my research that have acknowledged the sinful nature of man are generally the ones where freedom, justice, prosperity are the most prevalent.
Yeah. Not
the opposite. Again, communist Russia is based on this whole idea of you just create the perfect society and people will act right.
Right. No.
Which completely rejects the concept that any person can be sinful no matter what. And then you see that's just complete chaos, right? And so, whereas you see that in other societies that acknowledge the fact that men and women are fallible. Fallible. Yeah, we can't speak apparently.
Yeah.
But they tend to actually promote more justice than ones who do not, ironically enough.
Yeah. and a more respect for the dignity of individual humans.
Yep.
When you acknowledge that we're jacked up as human beings, okay, we acknowledge that. We're not going to be bent towards good, but we believe that God's common grace, the gospel, and how it influences society will start changing hearts.
Yeah.
So there's a huge difference. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So if these things are so, if government's job is to protect the rights and liberty of the people, walk in righteousness, justice, and do it non-partially, and punish evil and reward good, if that is true,
sure,
then we should be able to find these ideas in Scripture.
Yeah, right on.
So let's get into a couple of different scriptures.
Do you want me to read the first one that we have here?
Romans 13, 1-6. Go for it.
Cool. It says, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there's no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear for the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of God, attending to this very thing."
Right. So this is one of the main passages in the New Testament that addresses government.
It's a big one.
It is a big one.
I think that's almost surprising just reading it. You're like, man, Paul got into it.
He did.
Like he laid it out, which I think is I think that's super cool.
Right. And just a couple of points here, right? Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. So that word authorities there, when you get into it, at least in part, the Greek word there is getting at the idea of jurisdictions, right?
Okay.
So, for there is no authority except from God. There is no jurisdiction except from God. So what it's talking about here is that we should be subject to God's correct and right ordained jurisdiction of government, right? So it's like this sphere that God is giving government authority to operate in. Okay, so we're called to obey that. And what's some of that from this? What are some of the things it's supposed to be doing? Verse 4 gets at, for he, the governing authority, is God's servant for your good.
At least he's supposed to be. Yeah.
Right. Well, the jurisdiction, that's what it is. The jurisdiction is a servant of God for the good of the people.
Right.
That's the jurisdiction God has established and we're called to obey. Right? And then from that we have that he is given the sword from God. He is to be the avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. He's to punish evil, which also is for our good. It helps create a society where crime is down.
Yep.
So people can flourish.
Yep.
Right?